A young kid, Ayasaki Hayate, is seen to be asking Santa why he is the only one who never gets presents. Santa is too blunt with him as he tells Hayate how he never gets anything because of the fact that he is poor. Santa leaves after telling the kid to work extremely hard if he wants to improve his life. Years later, when Hayate had turned 16, he is working as a bicycle delivery boy. The kid is extremely hardworking, but still for some reason, misfortune never really leaves him alone. Hayate was already unlucky enough as his parents were unemployed, but things get even worse when he loses his job as his boss finds out about him being underage. The boss had given Hayate's hard-earned money to his dirtbag parents, and they just blew it all up in some stupid investing schemes. Hayate reaches back home to find that his parents have left him alone with a debt of 156 million yen as his Christmas present. Hayate was indebted to the Yakuza and he barely manages to escape the debt collectors. Hayate sits down at a park to decide his next move when he happens to find a wealthy-looking young girl there. Hayate was thinking about kidnapping her as he was quite desperate for money, but his kind nature stands in his way, and his request for money seems like a confession to that girl. Hayate later realizes that he can't be kidnapping people no matter what his financial situation is when a random kind woman happens to give him a warm scarf. Around the same time, the young girl, whose name was Nagi, actually gets kidnapped, and as she calls Hayate's name out, Hayate chases the kidnappers with his bicycle and in the end saves Nagi. Hayate passes out from his injuries, and Nagi, who was from the Sanzenin family, chooses to make Hayate her new butler. Nagi had brought Hayate to her mansion via helicopter, and he took a while to wake up before his injuries had completely healed. Before waking up, Hayate had another meeting with Santa, and that made him assume that he had reached heaven. Hayate passes out for a second time in the mansion's luxurious bath, and afterwards, he wakes up to the same woman who gave him that scarf earlier. The woman was Nagi's maid, Maria, and as she is explaining the situation to Hayate, Nagi comes and asks Hayate to be her new butler. Hayate accepted the request in a heartbeat, and while he was quite optimistic, the head butler of the mansion named Klaus didn't like Hayate's inclusion in the mansion's workforce. Maria is told to fire Hayate, but she isn't able to do so when Hayate proves just how good he is at things like cleaning due to his previous jobs. Hayate is wandering around the place when he enters Nagi's room and happens to see the manga she was drawing. Hayate had lived in poverty, and since he didn't know what a manga was, he mistakenly called it a picture book. This makes Nagi mad, and she throws Hayate out of her room, making him believe that he just got fired. Outside the mansion, the Yakuza from earlier were waiting for the guy, and they kidnapped him as soon as he got out. The kidnapping is seen by Maria, who then explains the situation to Nagi while she was busy playing video games. Hayate is brought to the shipyard, where he was already sure of the slave life awaiting him, when Nagi arrives to save him. Nagi opens up a bag full of money, and she frees Hayate from the Yakuza by paying the 156 yen debt right at that moment. The Yakuza leave, and Hayate agrees to pay off his debt to Nagi by working as her butler from now on. Hayate is brought back to the mansion so the official terms for his debts can be settled. According to the contract, the poor guy would have to work for at least 40 years, but he still isn't all that worried about his new life he got. Hayate gets to work quite fast, and with no proper job description, he is told to start off by waking up Nagi. Hayate opens Nagi's door and gets shocked after finding a white tiger lying in her bed. Nagi introduces the tiger as her pet Tama, and Hayate manages to make Tama mad as he was trying to reason with Nagi. Tama takes Hayate out in the garden to play, and head butler Klaus finds it a fit opportunity to gauge Hayate's competence. Hayate holds his own decently, and this little game continues until Maria sees the pair destroying her favorite garden. Maria puts a stop to the fight, and while treating Hayate, she explains how Nagi had brought Tama into this household after she found him alone in the wild. Hayate tries to relate with the big cat, but even Tama speaks up to put poor Hayate back in his place. The problem doesn't quite end just yet, as Klaus was still against Hayate being a part of this household. Maria suggested conducting some sort of tests, and the old man brought a guard robot named 8 for Hayate to fight. 8 malfunctions to a degree, and that forces Hayate to jump in and save Nagi. With no easy way to turn 8 off, Hayate traps the robot with some kitchen utensils and defeats him through electrocution. Hayate had gotten hurt himself as well, but he won Klaus's approval, and later on, Maria was also happy that he would be sticking around from now on. Time flies by ever since Hayate joined the Sanzenin family, and as spring arrives, so does Nagi's time to get back to school. Hayate was being flexed on by Tama when he noticed how Nagi was looking a bit disturbed while she was on her way to school. Hayate consults Maria and figures out that Nagi is actually an antisocial shut-in and that she had also forgotten to bring her bento to school. Being a hard-working butler, Hayate takes on the job of delivering the lunchbox, but in his way stood an angry teacher named Yukiji. The teacher didn't want to let Hayate in as he looked like a poor guy, but Hayate managed to get past her one way or the other. Yukiji was still after Hayate, so he had to navigate inside the school while staying low. The guy runs into a pink-haired girl inside the school, and he helps her out with a couple of things. The girl liked Hayate's kind nature, and she introduced herself as Katsura Hinagiku. Hinagiku was the student council president, and as a reward for helping her, she takes Hayate to the student council tower so he can have a bird's eye view around the school. Hinagiku was having a pleasant conversation with Hayate when Yukiji runs in on them and pulls out a sword to get Hayate. Yukiji was Hinagiku's sister, so she starts fighting her, which leads Yukiji to steal Hayate's lunchbox. Yukiji was standing on the railing when a strong wind blew her way and Hayate had to save her. Such a courageous act calmed Yukiji down and earned Hayate Hinagiku's interest. In the midst of all this drama, the lunchbox got destroyed, but Nagi still thanked Hayate afterwards for the effort he put into this job. On the next morning, Hayate wakes Nagi up and tries to get her ready for school, but she completely refuses to go outside and instead runs back inside her room. Maria reveals how Nagi isn't a fan of going outside, as she got kidnapped multiple times due to being the only child of the wealthy Sanzenin family. Around the same time, the mansion is visited by Nagi's relative and childhood friend Aizawa Sakuya, and after coming to know about the new butler, she goes on her quest to find out whether Hayate is funny enough or not. Sakuya takes Hayate outside, where she forces him to make some jokes. Hayate tries his best, and Sakuya acknowledges his potential to be a comedian in the future. Nagi emphasized that Hayate is better off as a butler, and as the temperature dropped outside, the group moves back in to have a cup of tea. Another one of Nagi's friends named Isumi was about to visit her place, and since the house was out of tea, Maria sent Hayate away to get some from the store. Maria gives Hayate an extremely expensive coat before he left, and our guy gets into quite the pinch while trying to make sure that the coat is not ruined. On the way, Hayate is passing through the park where he finds Isumi as she had lost her way. Isumi's butlers were looking around town for her, and when they finally find her with Hayate, our butler assumes that these dudes holding swords are kidnappers, and he runs away with Isumi. Hayate ruins his coat while trying to run away, and he drops Isumi off at Sanzenin Mansion before running back to avoid getting fired. Isumi was also Nagi's childhood friend, and after she makes it to the mansion, she reveals how Nagi's butler might be in a rough situation. Outside, Hayate was wondering about how he would face Maria after what he did to the coat when he is approached by the loan sharks from earlier. The sharks were acting respectfully towards Hayate, and things got worse when Isumi's butlers also found him. Hayate wanted to avoid the situation, but in the end, he had to get involved in the fight. The poor guy makes it back home somehow, but Nagi gets mad at him again, and he has to spend hours locked outside the mansion, completely drenched. Hayate catches a cold by the time he is let in, and after seeing Isumi make him a milkshake, Nagi also decides to cook something for him. Nagi makes a visually good-looking dish, but she had used soap instead of cooking oil. Even after noticing it, Hayate still eats the whole thing, and he completely heals by the time he wakes up the next morning. Hayate runs into a new maid and a young kid in the mansion, and he tries to bring them to the guest house since Maria told him to do so. The house security robots malfunctioned for some reason, so Hayate had to carry these two back to the guest room, where he comes to know that the young boy is Nagi's fiancé, Wataru Tachibana, and the other one is his maid Saki. Even though Wataru was engaged to Nagi, neither of the two were rather fond of the other, and just wanted to end this stupid engagement. The commotion caused by the pair wakes Isumi up, and as she joins the others, Maria reveals how Wataru likes Isumi quite a bit. Hayate sort of understands the situation, and as he is trying to do his butler duties, his interaction with Isumi makes Wataru jealous. The kid challenges Hayate to a duel so he can win Isumi over, and Hayate plays along. Hayate loses the duel intentionally, but his bad acting just ends up embarrassing Wataru, and he runs back home in tears. Hayate feels bad about what he did to the little guy, and as he plans to apologize, he mentions the subway system. Isumi finds the trains interesting, and she runs away on her own, forcing Hayate to look for her with Nagi. Hayate somehow makes it back to the mansion with the girls, and Nagi gives him some videotapes to return to Wataru. Hayate meets Saki on his way, and she takes him to the video store Wataru runs. The Tachibana family had gone bankrupt during the last recession, and after coming to know about this, Hayate appreciates Wataru's work ethic even more. Hayate wishes to help Wataru out by getting a membership in the shop, but he ends up finding out that his father had already rented out some DVDs on Hayate's name. The day ends with Hayate making up with Wataru, but the poor guy gets himself into some more debt to pay Wataru off. Some time had passed ever since Hayate became Nagi's butler, and after seeing Nagi's interest in Hayate, Maria decides to take matters into her own hands. While Hayate was cleaning in the yard, Maria asks him about his preferences in women, but she gets a bit disappointed after Hayate seems to not be interested in someone like Nagi. Nagi calls Hayate into her room and insists on him wearing girly clothes. Maria catches the two in the act, and even she isn't able to resist joining in. The ladies had dressed Hayate in a cat-girl type uniform, and this made Tama enticed. The big cat drags Hayate outside, where he barely manages to avoid quite the horrific event. Hayate was trying to change his clothes before Klaus saw him, but his misfortune strikes again, and now even Klaus starts catching feelings for him. Maria saves Hayate by knocking Klaus down, and his gratitude towards Maria bothers Nagi. At night, Hayate is wandering around the mansion when he runs into Maria as she is playing a game of pool. Maria finds this moment fitting for a good conversation, and she tells Hayate about how Nagi became friends with Isumi. Maria challenges Hayate to a game of pool where if he loses, his debt will increase to 200 million. Hayate couldn't say no when Maria agreed to do whatever he wanted if he wins, but he realizes his mistake quite soon after seeing just how good Maria was at the game. As Hayate obviously couldn't have paid that debt, Maria told him to instead marry Nagi, but our guy humbly declined, taking Maria by surprise. Maria fumbles the bag at the end, and that lets Hayate win a lost cause. Hayate was looking forward to getting his wish fulfilled, but he gets caught by Nagi, who punches him in the face before he could have revealed that he just wanted Maria to forgive him for destroying that coat earlier and nothing more. It was time for Isumi to head back over to her own house, and seeing Nagi sad, Isumi tells her to come to school if she wants to keep meeting up. Nagi obviously didn't like going out, but Hayate decided to take on the challenge since it was his duty as Nagi's butler. Hayate wakes Nagi up the next day, and he somehow convinces her to go to school by offering to drop her off. Nagi reluctantly agrees to the offer, and Hayate takes her to school on his bicycle. Nagi returns from school after the same old boring day, and by the time she makes it back home, it turns out that he had left her notebook in class. Hayate didn't want to waste Nagi's effort for attending school, so he headed on over to get the notebook for her. The guy runs into the same teacher, Yukiji, and requests her to give him the key to the classroom. Hayate follows Yukiji to the POD room, where he meets three girls named Izumi, Miki, and Risa. Hayate leaves after getting the key, and on his way to the school building, he feels like the building is a bit haunted. Hayate gets scared and falls into a hole and back to the POD room. The girls discuss the possibility of Hayate mistakenly entering the old school building. Hinagiku overhears that Hayate was looking around the school, and since the old school building was apparently haunted, she heads over to help him out. Hinagiku makes it to the building, but she gets scared herself, and Hayate had to save her from the presumable spirits. The pair jokes around for a bit, but when the same spirit from earlier gets defeated on its own, Hayate and Hinagiku hold hands and leave to look for the notebook. It turns out that the spirit from earlier was a fake one sent by Isumi, as she was here to exorcise demons, and later on, Hayate too manages to make it back to the mansion in one piece, with Nagi's notebook in his hands. Unlike his usual days, Hayate starts off the next day in a peaceful manner, but the guy had no clue of what was going to happen to him later in the day. After Nagi had her breakfast, Maria reveals how they need to visit the head of Sanzenin family named Mikado Sanzenin. Maria and Nagi take Hayate and Sakuya alongside and get on their private helicopter to visit the old man. Nagi warns Hayate to not pay attention to anything her grandfather says, and as they arrive at the Sanzenin family estate, Hayate understands that Nagi isn't just a normal rich girl. While many servants were greeting their young miss, the butlers capture Hayate, assuming that he is an intruder due to his poor man's face. After making it inside the mansion, Hayate gets out again to catch a breath when he runs into Mikado without even knowing it. Hayate explains his life story of 150 million in debt to Mikado, and the old man gives Hayate a reality check after introducing himself as the head of the family. Mikado remarked that if Hayate only wishes to live his whole life paying debts, his life is utterly worthless. The words were harsh, but they made Hayate realize that he needs a meaning in his life, other than paying debts. The old man gave Hayate a pendant, and later on, after saving Nagi from a random foreigner who wanted to inherit her estate, Hayate promises to protect Nagi for the rest of his life. With the indebted butler figuring out the meaning of his life and looking forward to paying his debt soon, our recap for the day comes to an end. Thanks for sticking till the end, and let us know in the comments if you guys want a second part of this series. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.